Greetings, my internet friends. Welcome to Walking and Talking, the show where I walk and talk. It occurs to me that even if I think beforehand that I have no idea how I'm going to start speaking, even if I think that this is some kind of approach it's also contradictory in that it's also already a linguistic concept pre-existing in my mind that is shaping how I start speaking, and indeed talking about that is how I began speaking. Even if I have an idea that I could even start speaking somehow from an absence of concepts, or even the idea that I could have an absence of concepts in my mind is, itself obviously a concept. And I suppose that we're dealing in language here necessarily, since I'm speaking continuously, so that's sort of inevitable, and but also interesting that we seem to be apparently proceeding on some assumption that some sort of blank slate approach to speaking is preferable and even possible. But also, the way that I'm speaking now implies already a skepticism towards the idea of some kind of blank slate speaking, or skepticism towards the possibility of an absence of concept. Because it's not, I don't think it's really been true for quite a long time that I've really believed in the possibility of avoiding thought, or even avoiding worldly matters. Mostly, it's a challenge to reconcile this kind of activity with the apparent urgency of worldly matters. That's the difficult thing. However, I have some kind of sneaking suspicion that trying to answer that question head on is not going to work. That is, trying to answer the question of how this relates to worldly matters, also the question of is this even in any way otherworldly or in any way a transcendent type of activity, and I feel loath to make any such claim, but I only bring it up as being part of the problem of it, in that I think that when I'm doing this, I'm usually speaking very abstractly and getting into topics of consciousness and philosophical metaphysics, in my weird way. And the question is something like, is that appropriate? Given circumstances in the world in which, in the immediate sense, tons of people are dying and in an incredibly desperate situation, and, for instance, my government is supporting that, actively encouraging it, all of that stuff. And it looks like a terrible mistake, and it's like, how can this lead to anything good in the future also? And looking at the potential for this conflict to spread and involve more and more people and grow into wider and wider violence and instability. So how do I justify doing something like walking and talking in such a time? But like I just said, I don't think I can directly answer that question. Maybe it's not the best question to be focusing on. I feel this tension because this thing that I do has grown in my mind to be so just not political. I mean, maybe not so much not going so far as to make a claim for this as being apolitical, but that it has, in my mind, focused in somewhat abstract ways on things that I imagine to be somewhat fundamental about experience itself. And in that way, being kind of somewhat, expressly not about particulars, but not so much about narratives and topical interests, but in some ways more about what maybe I conceive of as the broad or basic or fundamental dynamics of, for instance, the particular, and also dynamics of things like identification, that is sort of like the experience of having identity, being identified with various characteristics or entities or phenomena, or even identified with slightly more abstract notions like a state or ethnicity or a people. So in some regard, and I don't want to not to excuse myself and not to rationalize this activity, or to focus, not to spend too much time not to spend too much time like positioning what I'm doing as useful in any way. But maybe it could be said that this phenomenon of identification, which in some ways is like I can see as a very significant aspect of, experience at all. And we can generally assume that we're talking about human experience, more or less. I mean, if you're a perceiving entity that doesn't identify as human, I can only imagine that you're some kind of transhuman, or what we currently refer to as artificial intelligence that in the future from me that has developed something like consciousness or identification as some kind of self that understands English. Anyhow, this phenomenon of identification that in my mind is kind of inextricable from experience. Perhaps some mystics or spiritually minded people might say otherwise, or that there's a possibility for otherwise, of having experience absent of being identified with anything. Perhaps all I'm making is a semantic distinction, in that I would say that for there to exist something like experience, then necessarily there is someone or something to which the experience occurs, someone or something that is having the experience, and something that is experienced. And so there is a separation that occurs, and then therefore there's an identity. And it also seems that this process of identification has very much to do with what I'm referring to as his worldly affairs. The situation in which certain entities are enacting a whole lot of violence on other entities. However, please don't suspect that the implication, therefore, is that all you have to do is disidentify with what you consider yourself, and then the problem of violence just disappears. It's simple as that. Obviously, it's not so simple. Some people, well, I guess a number of people from different sorts of disciplines have said something to the effect that our perception is shaped a lot by our need for survival and the various mechanisms by which we maintain the equilibrium, which is our survival. And that the way our perception is shaped is actually shaping the world around us. It is actually shaping what appears to be the objective reality that we live in. And I think this idea can be seen in the biological sciences and social sciences, and even in particle physics, like fundamental physics. You know, wherein we increasingly refined the detail in which we could observe reality to look closer and closer at what seem to be the fundamental building blocks of reality, you know. Cells and then molecules and atoms, you know, developing more powerful and powerful microscopes and developing more and more precise description of the the small, as well as the large, and getting to this point at which we see in quantum physics that the perceiver is actually determining reality, determining the way in which the potentiality manifests as reality of, whether something manifests as a particle or a wave and so forth. And when you take the full implications of that, it's kind of like even what we see as the fundamental laws of physics or the laws of nature are as much a reflection of the shape of our perception in that, the idea that the laws of nature are more like descriptions of what is consistent across a wide variety of observed phenomena, what is consistent across the huge myriad of variety of forms and motions and events and interactions that we see. And that, yes, these laws of physics say something about the perceiving entity as much as they say anything about the quote-unquote objective world, which, when we really get down to it, these things become indistinguishable from each other. But it's been said that even coming from this realm of physics, it's been said that this the particular shape of perception, and therefore the shape of the world as perceived, has everything to do with instrumentality. That is, it has everything to do with utility to the perceiving entity. That, like as an example, you try to take a concept seemingly as kind of self-evident and concrete as as mass, to say that something has mass. And I could think of mass as kind of the abstracted concept that represents the consistency across a wide degree of phenomenon, such as the heaviness of this rock in relation to me. And so, I mean, even if we take it just to, even if I didn't have to think of the abstract concept of mass and say something maybe even more kind of basic, just that this rock is heavy, something that seems quite self-evident if I just try to pick up the rock. Or, you know, I can take a smaller rock and I can lift that easily, but one of these huge rocks I cannot lift. And so I have this idea of heaviness, at least, or various versions of that, like weight or mass or even gravity. If one observes and thinks long enough about it, get to this idea of gravity, or thinking longer and harder about it, and then getting to this theory of relativity and gravity as being simply a manifestation of the curvature of space-time, so on and so forth, but not really necessary. But to make my point that even something just like the heaviness of this rock having a lot to do with utility to me as a person. The heaviness of this rock being in relation to my body, something that is experienced through my senses, and having to do a lot with whether I can lift the rock or not, or whether I can move the rock, or whether I need a whole bunch of people to move the rock, or if I need a large machine, how big of a machine do I need to move it? Is the heaviness of the rock useful to me? Can I build a shelter out of it? Can I use it to make a deadfall trap to catch an animal so I can eat it? Can I, use the heaviness of the rock to crack open a nut so I can eat it? Can I use the heaviness of the rock such that I can know that I can walk around on it, I can move across the rock without it giving way? It can support my weight. And, understanding this idea of weight being something that's pretty inextricable from my own survival as a human being. And furthermore, the more kind of like abstracted concepts related to this idea of heaviness, weight, mass, relativity, gravity, space-time curvature, etc., can be seen as kind of collective perceptions that are instrumental to a society. And this is really evident when you simply look at technological development and how dependent it has been on science, like this process of observation across a wide range of phenomena and determining consistencies across the phenomena and formulating them into these laws or principles that can then be followed and utilized for technological developments. You know, and then we have the microwave oven, and then we have a better understanding of thermodynamics and heat loss and such, and so we can maybe more efficiently utilize thermodynamic potential for keeping ourselves warm and transporting ourselves around and transporting goods around and all that important stuff. Or the understanding of mass and gravity being important also to technological development, and, you know, making a building that's not going to fall down easily, and so on and so forth. Making it a bridge, whatever, you get the idea. But these laws of nature that you can see as sorts of extensions of these, like, very basic individual human perceptions, like heaviness, you know, and heaviness, you know, it's a very, like, first-hand perceived sort of thing. If I pick up any of these rocks, I'm going to perceive its heaviness, and I'm going to perceive a different degree of heaviness depending on which rock I pick up. So these more sophisticated like natural laws and so forth that we use can be seen as extensions or extrapolations of this first-hand experience, this sensed experience. And so it's like they are things that are used in a more collective scale that allow for larger scale coordination of our efforts to collectively build the sorts of infrastructure that allows our societies to continue. And so these sort of, like, collective perceptions, as I'm kind of temporarily calling them, are like our individual perceptions, determining that they are both reflective of the shape of our collective perception, and they are, in a sense, determining the shape of the reality that we perceive around us. You know, there are our conception of the world, you know, if we're looking at the world through the lens of whatever current conception of physics or religion or whatever it is that we're looking at the world through, determines how the world appears to us to a certain extent. I'm not saying that all of that is arbitrarily alterable. It's not arbitrarily alterable because this all operates within certain limitations that are actually presented to us through the shape of the external world. Maybe there's some debate about that to be had, but maybe I'll get into that later, about the degree to which our worldviews are alterable. But one thing that could be said is that our worldviews have to be, at least to some degree, alterable in order to allow for survival. They have to be, to some degree, able to evolve and become more comprehensive and be able to better accommodate the phenomenon that we perceive. So if you have one worldview and then you observe a phenomenon or multiple phenomenon that directly contradict that worldview, then your worldview is going to have to change or expand in order to accommodate this observed phenomenon. In order for you to make enough sense of your reality to be able to continue. And this goes for the individual level, to be able to continue living your life without dying, or becoming, immiserated. And it also goes on the more collective sense of, say, for a culture to go on surviving, or a race or a species or a ecosystem or whatever is an entity that has any identification whatsoever. And there are all these different types of entities that have identification. For instance, individually, I have some kind of identification as a human being, and people's identification may be constituted also with various entities that are transpersonal or collective, as in they'll have some identification with other human beings, as in, like, for instance, I just said that I have some identification as an individual human. That identification is inextricable of my recognition and relationship to other human beings. That is, to the extent that I recognize myself as a human being, it kind of means that I look at another human being and recognize them as something similar, at least, or as, like, of the same type. Meaning, basically what I'm meaning, even if there are exceptions to that, which is something that pertains to what I'm talking about, actually. What I'm basically getting at is that my individual identification is kind of inextricable from a collective type of identification. That is, I wouldn't be able to have a conception of myself without having a type of conception that also applies to the others. And then there might be other types of entities that also constitute my identification, like a nation or an ethnicity or a tribe or team or sports team or political movement or political party or various ideologies that I might have, aspects of my worldview, beliefs that I have about the world that I would share with some other people and would oppose others, would contradict with other people's beliefs. So these are, all of these conceptions of who I am are both collective and individual. But the point of that what I was getting at is that while, the some amount of flexibility of my worldview as a person is necessary for my survival. And just to illustrate that, like, if you think of an infant, then an infant necessarily has to have this enormous plasticity of even the very fundamental seeming aspects of its identity, in order for it to learn what it is in the world, in order to keep itself alive. And of course, human infants are the most dependent on our parents and society teaching us and rearing us, because we're so helpless, because we're so adaptable. But let me just say, in the very basic sense of, like, you come out of the womb and you would have to learn how to make this distinction between your own finger and food and things that are not food, in order for not to, just chomp your own finger off, and not to just, like, destroy yourself by eating rocks, and to continue to nourish your own body and ensure the continued equilibrium of your body by obtaining the right types of nutrition. And then you have to learn to walk, so you have to really like identify what's your left leg and your right leg, and how to balance, and what these various signals of heaviness coming from your neurons mean, and all of this stuff. And then you have to like learn a language, which means adopting, which means, you know, learning this whole vast array of symbols and concepts even that you're going to need to continue in the world, to be able to like communicate with other people, and to have your needs adequately met. And so there's this enormous degree of flexibility to, you know, you have to, your entire childhood, you're learning what works and what doesn't work in terms of maintaining a state of equilibrium that involves not only just these very basic physical needs, hey birds, but also like emotional needs as well, and need for acceptance and belonging with other people and all that sort of stuff. And so you're constantly updating your worldview to from all these experiences that you have of things that work and don't work. Hey dear. So as that, well, that happens on an individual level. I mean, and this like continues into adulthood to various extents. It kind of seems like as you develop into an adult, this flexibility can have a tendency to taper off or something, as these things that you've learned kind of become a little more set, a little bit more concrete. But maybe that's because they have been to some degree successful. That, you know, you learned what's your left foot and what's your right foot, and how to, so that you can place one in front of the other successively, and you learned how to speak the language and how to get around in the world. More or less sufficiently, and so your worldview encounters fewer obstacles. It encounters fewer contradictions in what you thought was important to be able to survive and perhaps even flourish. And so the plasticity in one's worldview might diminish some, or as the need for the plasticity diminishes some. But I was going to say that, you know, as this happens on an individual level, it necessarily also happens on a collective level. Say, for instance, you know, let's say that you are growing and making more comprehensive your understanding of the physical laws of the world, trying to make them more accurate and precise, and basically more correlating better and better with the ways that phenomena actually happen. And so like these concepts, exist in collective consciousness in order to be available to individuals. So it's like my concept of the curvature of space-time under Einstein's theory of relativity, I didn't come up with that myself. It's something that he came up with also in conversation with all these other physical theories, all these other theories, that aspect of worldview, arises from a collective effort. And therefore it's available to me as some kind of tool for understanding my reality. And if nobody else had thought of it before, then it wouldn't be so available to me unless I happen to be some kind of that particular kind of person that comes up with it by himself. But it never actually happens, by yourself. It happens, even if you're Einstein, it happens in response to the work of other people in your field and other people who are thinking about the same thing. And it depends on the theories that came before it. And this isn't all just about only about the hard sciences and descriptions of nature in that sort of way, but also about the quote-unquote soft sciences, like the social sciences and political theories. Cultural understandings, religious views, philosophical views. Really everything. Really every aspect of how we experience ourselves in the world. And so when you have some kind of what I call it, some kind of collective type of entity, whether that be a state or ethnicity or tribe or any kind of group of people that shares some kind of identifying characteristic with one another. Any kind of group of people that share some type of worldview. And it's of course like all these different worldviews may have spheres that are overlapping each other in different populations. For instance, it's not like every single person in the United States has one religion, or everybody in one country has one religion, and it's not true that everyone that has a particular religion identifies with one country, And it's not true that everybody with one particular religion has the same political outlook on the world, and it's not true that everyone with the same political outlook on the world shares the same religion, and so on and so forth. It's all these all of these shared concepts have these overlapping and different groups of people. You know, they're not all overlapping in the same way, is what I'm saying. They don't completely correlate with each other, even though, you know, some particular worldviews will have a tendency to correlate more strongly with other worldviews. But the fact that you can identify their differentness means that they don't correlate perfectly. So I should say, like, the fact that I can identify an idea that, such as whatever it may be, like being against abortion, and I can say something like being against abortion correlates strongly with I don't know. I don't even want to go into it, because if I give an example, it's gonna be very insufficient, because it's always more complicated. But just to say that, like, I think you get the idea. Anyhow, I lost my trail markers here, so I gotta find where I'm at. Okay, I'm still on the trail. Oh, it goes that way. Okay. But basically what I'm saying is, just in the same way as an individual frequently does encounter something in their life, in the world, that seems to contradict some aspect of their understanding of the world, and will then experience a form of pressure to change their understanding of the world in order to incorporate this experience they've had, or this observation they've made, then so must collective entities sometimes. I mean, and this is as simple as this is basically a overcomplicated way of saying the most basic thing of, if one thing doesn't work, then you got to figure out something else. You got to try something else. So like collectively, if we think about worldviews, we can think about when it was largely thought that the sun revolves around the earth, or that the stars also, the sun and the stars all revolve around the earth, and it seems obvious, right? If you didn't know anything, you look up in the sky and look for long enough, oh, obviously the sun's revolving around us. Hello.
Hello.
It's obvious, right? Or I mean, like, or maybe it's not so obvious. Maybe it's more obvious that the sun jumps up from one side of the flat earth and then makes this arc and goes down on the other side of the flat earth, and then somehow it sneaks back over to the other side. How does it do that? I don't know. And it does that every single day. And then oh, you have the brilliant idea, oh, it's going around us, obviously. And same with the stars, but at a different rate for some reason. And same with the moon, but for some reason the moon's doing it at a different rate. And so that's your worldview. But then, you look closer and longer and observe these things, and you observe these particular things that don't follow the pattern, like these planets that, well, you don't understand they're planets yet because they're just other dots that look pretty much like stars. And then you see these, they're not following the pattern exactly. They're doing all this weird stuff that doesn't fit into the pattern. And then, you think about it really hard for a long time, and then come up with this Copernican idea that, whoa, actually it's not the case. Like, we're actually not the center of the universe. Even though in the seemingly direct way, it's not like we observe the land, the thing that we're standing on, to be flying through space at incomprehensibly fast speeds. That is indeed the case, as far as we can tell. That is, the Copernican, the idea that the Earth is just one of several planets, and it's revolving around the sun, not the other way around. We're not the center of this solar system. We're not the center of it. And then the idea that actually this sun, this thing that it looks so completely different from all these other little specks of light we see at night, it's just another one of these stars. It's just another one of those things. We just happen to be closer to it. And then that puts us even farther away from some idea of being central. How humiliating. Or just, it doesn't have to be humiliating. It's just humbling to learn that you are such an insignificant aspect of the world. And then, but then like to be able to update your world view in such a shattering way. Like, can you imagine having to change your mind from believing all your life that the earth was the center of the universe and everything is just spinning around it, to having to reckon with this idea that it's not only not the center, it's also incomprehensibly tiny in relation to the universe. It's so incredibly tiny and insignificant. I mean, just try to imagine yourself trying to change from the former worldview to the latter, and imagine how insane that would feel. Like, what the fuck? It's like my whole conception of reality has been shattered. Like, what the who the fuck are we now? This brings up all kinds of fucking questions. Like, why would God make the universe this way? Like, what is our meaning in relation to the rest of the world now? What is it? What the fuck is our point of being here? Like, what the fuck is going on? I mean, it would have to have been like that, right? And kind of understandably, it's like some people would react negatively against this. Like, which comes back to, Copernicus wasn't even the first person who had this realization. There was another philosopher way earlier than Copernicus who had this realization and tried to spread the idea, and nobody would accept it. People were just like, that's fucking insane. Obviously, everything's spinning around the earth. If we're moving so fast, wouldn't we notice it if we were spinning around? Like, wouldn't we be getting dizzy if we were revolving around the sun? And the idea was just squashed. Terribly for me, I'm forgetting the name of that earlier philosopher, which, is kind of a crime, but the rest of the world had to, I don't know, took a long time to evolve enough receptivity to this notion before Copernicus was able to kind of like reintroduce it. But then, having grappled with this shift in worldview, this like shift in this drastic shift in how we understand reality, it's like then the field of astronomy is able to continue in a way that makes way much more sense than all the like weird crazy conceptions that would have to like come up in order to accommodate the geocentric worldview. These ideas that, the planets are like these weird things that like go backwards sometimes and then they go forward. And then you have to come up with some weird, elaborate, untenable explanation for why the planets are going backwards sometimes. And then, once you grapple with this idea that the Earth is going around the sun and not the other way around, and that the sun is just one of those stars, then it all fits together a lot better and you can proceed. But what I'm saying is that that need to be able to update aspects of your worldview has not ended. And when a crisis presents itself, sometimes that's a crisis of part of your worldview, and what's necessary, well, there's almost nothing to say other than you got to figure something else out. For instance, I think it should be fairly uncontroversial to say that when there's evidently a seemingly interminable and bloody conflict between two groups of people going on, then one or quite possibly both, one or both of these groups of people, well, no, actually what I should say is that one or more of the aspects of the worldviews that are involved in the conflict is apparently in need of changing. And which one it is, well, that's something that has to be figured out. I mean, I'm not trying to become too specific right here. I'm just kind of talking about some general process. And I mean, I guess I'm talking about it in a way that seems now like it's so obvious that I'm not really taking much of a stance because I'm basically not saying that much other than something that, yeah, seems so obvious that I'm saying that there's something not working, and in order to maintain all of the same worldviews on part of all parties involved is apparently going to be increasingly costly in terms of human suffering and death and insecurity. And it's going to have a cost on every other aspect of life. Hold on, I got a whiz. That's better. I whizzed. And I, in a sense, I restored the relative equilibrium of one aspect of that which I identify with, which is a relief, you know? And in the process, now I feel like I have several ideas that I want to talk about. And I feel slightly less bleak than I did before, which kind of seems miraculous. But I mean, I don't want to say that was all just because I had to pee, but sometimes it can be something like that. Like you could have this, you could be having a terrible experience, and be having like, the world is fucking terrible. It's all doom. My life is fucked, and so is the world. And be having this, your worldview could be exceedingly negative, and then at some point you just realize something like, oh shit, I haven't eaten in a long time. I need to eat something. And then you eat something, and your entire world like transforms, or like you're like, damn, I haven't gotten laid in forever, and then you get laid, and then, oh, okay, life's not so bad. Or it's something like you just had a vitamin B, or you just had a vitamin D deficiency and started taking vitamin D. Oh, okay. Not so bad. So I'm just talking about these sort of things where, like, at one point where, like, a problem may have looked enormous and complicated and intractable. That is, you're looking at the world, it's all going to hell. Evil is omnipresent, or something like that. And then it was just something as simple as you didn't have enough vitamin D, or you needed to go outside, or something like that. And then things come into some kind of relative clarity, or at least start to proceed and move forward. Know what I'm saying? And I'm kind of saying that this can be the case on a collective level too. That like it could seem like there's some collective problem that seems like intractable and inevitable, and it's as old as time, and it's gonna go. It's this horrible thing is gonna go on forever, and there's basically nothing we can do about it because it's because of this deeply ingrained fundamental aspect of human nature, or something like that. And then maybe you realize, oh, maybe just like one party was not getting the basic things that it needs to survive and flourish as human beings. And so you fix that, and maybe things aren't immediately perfect, but they're moving forward in a much better way. I mean, I'm saying something also, again, just to generalize this into oblivion, just that it's possible to fix things. Like things that I'm just saying things that can appear to be immensely intractable, I think are just an indicator that you need to try something that has not been tried yet. Or just there might be, there might be just one specific thing or a few specific things that are missing from the equation. And it's not so intractable at all, But, I mean, a thing that I wanted to talk about is, how I've been talking about a sort of updating of worldviews. Maybe you could even call it an evolution of worldview. So, like, the example I was talking about is having this very basic kind of first-hand individual experience of the heaviness of rocks. And I start to make connections between different observed phenomena. Say I'd pick up a small rock and it's not very heavy, and I pick up a big rock and it's more heavy, and I pick up a bigger rock and it's heavier than that. And so, like, I can make this kind of observed correlation between the size of a rock and how heavy it's going to be for me to move it. And that's useful. That's much more useful than not understanding that and then just having to try picking up every single rock that I see, regardless of the size, and it being kind of a crapshoot as to how difficult or impossible it is for me to lift it. So now I've got this correlation and kind of something slightly more complex in my conception of the world that's useful to me, that can save me a lot of trouble. I'm not even going to try to lift that giant boulder. But then something is going to maybe occur that is going to contradict that pattern. So let's say we call that pattern something like size heaviness correlation, and then something's going to come and contradict that pattern. Say, for instance, I come across a different type of rock that is actually really light, even if it's bigger than some other rocks. So maybe I come across some kind of like a pumice or a volcanic rock that is really lightweight, even though there's a smaller rock than it that's heavier than it. And then I have to be like, oh, okay, so the size weight correlation is not constant across all rocks. But then also, there's wood here, and this chunk of wood is a lot larger than this rock, but it's not as heavy as rock. And so, okay, then we see there's this difference between wood and rock, and so the size heaviness correlation does not hold across that. And so maybe I eventually, after making enough of these observations and making enough connections between them, come across some idea like density. And then along with the combined conceptions of density and size, I have a more comprehensive and more useful, more utilitarian understanding of the world around me that's gonna help me in making my way through the world. So I'm like, wasting less effort, able to build things and use things more efficiently to my ends. And then as time goes along and I communicate with other people, sometimes with regard to things like how heavy things are and how dense things are. Maybe sometimes me and these other people have come across we have discrepancies in how we understand the world, and sometimes we need to coordinate our actions, and so we have to figure out some kind of worldview that is able to correlate our different individual observations. Something that is a worldview that accommodates all the things that we have experienced and observed, the both of us, so that we can communicate about things and coordinate. And then, so eventually this idea of mass, like that the weight is going to be different on different planets, might even arise through even observation, and even observation of the movement of the bodies in the heavens. That is the interactions of heavenly bodies being caused by the same thing that causes the different heavinesses of different materials on the earth. Wow, what a thing! And but basically, the what I want to point out about the sort of direction of the change of these understandings is that when you're proceeding to update these, each successive leap of understanding leads to a worldview that is more comprehensive than the one preceding it, as in a worldview that it has to incorporate all the observations that were supporting your previous worldview, as well as incorporate the new observations. And so there's a sense in which the new worldview kind of encompasses the old worldview, but explains more. And it may even merge what was previously two disparate worldviews. That is, there was the observation of the bodies in the heavens, the way the planets interact with each other, and moons interact with the planets and stuff, and that was one kind of theory. And then there was the observation of how heavy things are and on the earth, and that was something completely different. And then lo and behold, there's one understanding that actually corresponds perfectly with understanding both of those things in the same way. Gravity. So gravity can explain a greater diversity of observed phenomena than the previous thing, than the previous way we were looking at it. So there's fewer like inconsistencies and like elaborate complexities involved. Like, you know, it's like when understanding has to become like really, really elaborate in order to like incorporate all the what would be inconsistencies, then it starts to get weak. Like, you know, in my personal opinion, like the idea that God created the fossil record on the earth, or perhaps that Satan created the fossil record on the earth just in order to trick people into not believing in the Christian God, seems like a particularly far-fetched and elaborate modification in order to try and incorporate observed phenomena in the world that would contradict the worldview of the Christian creator God having created the earth a few thousand years ago. And then it gets like, and then to keep holding on to that it gets increasingly implausible when you know have stuff like radiocarbon dating and astronomy, and like it's like more and more observation of reality, which correlates with each other within the worldview of science. Is increasingly contradictory, increasingly it's increasingly hostile to the worldview that God created the world a few thousand years ago. And so that becomes more and more fragile and becomes more of a hindrance to the evolution of humanity. Becomes more of a hindrance to acting effectively in the world. And I mean, intuitively, I kind of want to say that with these successive like leaps of worldview, both more and more phenomena can be understood in a way that is coherent, and a way that where all these phenomena become related to each other in a coherent way. I mean, and the examples that I've been using are kind of like, let's say, the types of third-person explanations of reality. So like the hard sciences, or just not even necessarily the hard sciences, but the sciences that is evolving a third-person description of what the world is, why it's the way that it is, why things interact with each other the way they do, and so on and so forth, and which hopefully is useful has some predictive power as well. But there's also like the evolution of the first person perspectives, like the the evolution of these like cultural understandings of the world, of the understanding of like, who am I, what is my place in the world, and then like collectively, like, who are we, and what is our meaning in the world. And I would like to say, and hopefully I am not being overly idealistic by saying this, is that the general direction for the evolution of the aspect of worldview involved in first person identification, that is the aspect of worldview that in which I'm asking who or what am I, and who or what are we, and and then like subsequently, like, what is our place in the world, what is our relationship with each other and relationship with the world. I want to say that the successive leaps in that type of subjective understanding lead to, or in a general sense, a more expansive form of identification, as in, I mean, let's try to like formulate some kind of examples here, that the way that I understand my own identity, as it evolves into a more comprehensive understanding, means that I understand my identity as being increasingly linked with everyone else and everything else. So like trying to think of some kind of example. Let's say in like an earlier mythic type of, or maybe even pre-mythic, but like we could even say types of magical or animistic worldviews, and this is just kind of a general label. Let's just say that we can think of some very old types of worldviews that when we were looking out at the world, obviously we could really only understand things in terms of our understanding of ourselves. We can really understand everything we see in terms of the human experience. So for instance, like there are some religions that understood and maybe still today understand what stars are as like souls of people who have passed away from the earth. So like and then just more broadly, like a lot of religions, belief systems that would understand the heavenly bodies that we observe as being types of beings just like us, more or less like us. Maybe they're forms of human beings. Like the stars up there, in that one example are people who have passed on from the earth. Or, for instance, the stars and the moon and the sun are deities that are more or less human in their qualities, or maybe in some ways they are superhuman in their qualities, but they are beings whose qualities are composed of human-like characteristics, even if they're superhuman. And that even as we interact with nature around us, in an animistic type of belief system, nature was composed of spirits that could be upset or pleased with our actions, and would need to be reckoned with in a human way. We would need to appease the spirits of nature around us who have feelings like us. And now I would say that, even if, broadly speaking, that type of worldview seems antiquated in relation to our more, what we think of as our more sophisticated scientific understandings, that we could say, at least in the modern world, have more correlative consistency for the time being, and provide in the modern world more predictive power and more technological utility. So, basically what I'm saying is that, or as an example of what I'm saying is that we couldn't have things like chemotherapy to treat cancer without the type of scientific worldview that has been developed. That type of technology would probably be difficult to maintain alongside something like an animistic religious belief, as in the types of understandings of the world that allow for the development of chemotherapy, technology, etc. Would not be that conducive to an animistic type of belief, where, for example, we are appeasing spirits around us. Are they totally incompatible? Maybe not. However, what am I saying? What exactly am I saying? What I am actually getting at is that even if not that many people now would think of the stars and the heavens as predominantly as consisting of human spirits departed from the earth, but think of them more in terms of that star is actually a huge fiery nuclear reaction along the lines of the sun, and governed by at least similar, if not the same, physics that govern the interactions of objects here on the earth, and even within my own body. on one hand, we can consider, on one hand, we can think of our more recent worldviews as developments, but at the same time, I can also think of them as having an important similarity in that, in fact, our worldviews today, in a certain sense, are as human-centric as they ever have been, in the sense that as we kind of understand, if we understand the full implications of our most advanced theories of physics, of quantum physics, if we fully deal with all those implications, we see that the world around us is actively being created by our human-shaped perception, our human-shaped perceptual and cognitive faculties, and like the form of our sensory apparati, and even the form of ourselves as human. So in some sense, if you come to understand the laws of physics, like I was saying earlier, as reflections of the human experience, then you can see that in some ways it's this worldview in a certain fundamental sense is not so different than understanding the stars in the sky as being in some way human. Do you see what I'm saying? That even the worldviews that with the worldviews that we have now, and the worldviews that we might tend to view as antiquated, or at least as very old, have something very basic in common, and perhaps in one sense completely natural and inevitable, that we can only conceive of the world in terms of ourselves, even if it's the best and most expansive forms of ourselves that we conceive of, and our most expansive and best and comprehensive conception of the world. That is something in common with human understanding, going back to as far as you can take it, as far as you can think. Because what else would be possible? You know what I mean? Like how it comes down to there being a perspective at all, there being experience at all. That is, how could we even experience the world if we don't have a particular vantage point from which to experience it? And it necessarily has to be particular, meaning it has to have a specific form. So we have the human form of experience, you and I, or perhaps you're some kind of Perhaps you're some kind of future AI consciousness human hybrid, or perhaps you're some sort of future consciousness, or perhaps even larger type of consciousness that I, from my particular vantage point, cannot be aware of. But you're some form of consciousness that can, understand what the English language means, and therefore you can understand what I'm saying. But necessarily to perceive anything, you have to have some kind of perspective that has particularity to its form and its shape and the parameters of perception. Which is the same as saying the parameters of experience. And the parameters of perception and experience apply equally to the conception of self and the conception of other. But the thing I was kind of getting at earlier, and the thing that I was referring to when I said I hope that I'm not being too idealistic when I say this, is that to the extent that we conceive of like this evolution of worldview, in the third person domain, how I've kind of talked about how the evolution of a third person understanding of the world results in progressively more coherent and expansive understandings of, the way the quote-unquote external world operates. So too with this first-person understanding, the sort of like conception of subjectivity and the conceptions of identification and what our selfhood is composed of. I'm saying I think that the general direction would be towards a self-conception that is more expansive and inclusive of more and more forms of subjectivity. That is, for example, if I I'm really if a particular if I'm an adherent of a monotheistic religion, and this religion includes among its beliefs the belief that my God is the one true God, and any other God that anybody else believes in is false, and that people that believe in that God are, in fact, a form of evil. it's like then I'm inherently being set up with a type of hierarchy between my people and other people, my people and other people, and this predisposes me towards being identified as allied with my people and as being, and these other people as being my enemies. That, you know, maybe I can save them by converting them to my religion, or maybe they simply have to be conquered, maybe even killed. Because I am seeing the world as revolving around myself in a certain way. It's, I want to say it's like loosely analogous to understanding the sun as and the rest of the universe as evolving around the earth. The earth being the center of the universe, or the earth having been created for man, because, you know, how else do you explain why a cooked fish tastes so good? Etc. How in a certain way it's like I'm always at the center of a certain type of hierarchy of identification, and in some sense that's like a natural aspect of any type of identification. That like that, you know, your own subjectivity in a sense is necessarily central. I mean, it's almost definitionally your subjectivity. And then what you observe as being not your subjectivity, that is like the rest of the world, is to varying degrees can only kind of be seen as secondary to your subjectivity in a certain way, or necessarily there to support your subjectivity, as being there and perceived as like either useful to the continuance and thriving of your own subjectivity, or neutral to it, or a hindrance to it. So if it's like if a significant portion of my identity consists of a particular understanding of what reality is, and then I'm perceiving another person who in some ways kind of resembles myself, seems to share aspects of my form, just in that they look like another human being, but they believe something totally different, or they lay a claim to the material support for my existence, and their claim is based upon a worldview that contradicts my worldview. Then I'm going to only perceive them as not only an obstacle to my own existence, an obstacle to my subjectivity, but then also just necessarily like they're far removed from me in the sort of like hierarchy of that which I identify with. It's like they're not nearly as they're far less important than are the things that I identify with, which might be like my people whom share the same beliefs or whatever, or my people who maybe not even necessarily share the same third person understanding of the world, but whom I have a shared means of subsistence with. That is, like, I have a group of people who are important to my survival because we are materially interdependent in a way that I see another group of people and I perceive them as not being materially interdependent with myself, and so it puts me and my people as more central, to my personal survival than theirs. And so I'm not going to care very much about doing bad things to them. Anyhow, this is maybe getting too like specific or something, even though it's ostensibly fairly general. But I think I feel like I'm veering away from understandings that seem more self-evident or something, or more directly supported by simply thinking. Anyhow, what was I getting at? Hold on, I got a whiz. Just as happened last time, like immediately after I take a whiz, the thought comes to me, what I'm trying to get at, which is like I was talking about before, in the sense that, in the way that, for example, two disparate understandings of the world, say like the observation of the way heavy things interact on Earth, and they fall down, and they're hard to lift in varying degrees, and then this understanding of like the way the bodies in the heavens interact with each other, the way that you see these spheres floating around in circles and orbiting each other, and they seem completely at odds with each other, the two ideas. Like, why is it that on Earth heavy things, all things just like go down, but then out in space they just seem to go in circles and orbit each other and seem to remain in some sort of suspension, and it would seem as if the two understandings are contradict each other. But then once you kind of come up with gravity, it's a theory that actually unifies the two understandings and sees them as sees the phenomena as being part of the same thing. So if you'll allow me to make sort of a very stretched metaphor here, you could have two like identified groups of people seeming to be completely at odds with each other. Because their ways of understanding themselves and their ways of understanding how to survive in the world, up until a certain point, have proved workable. That, like, you know, a certain maybe religious or political or just material understanding of how to go through the world, various of these aspects of their worldview have been helpful. Until a certain point, they come into friction and conflict with another group of people. But what's needed is, like, how do you find the correct changes? How do you find the necessary changes that can kind of like envelop and embrace both opposing worldviews, and for two groups of people to whatever necessary extent understand themselves as relating to each other and being to some extent dependent on each other. And I say not necessarily not necessary that they have to be totally materially dependent on each other, but an understanding that they are both inhabiting a world in which being in conflict with each other has negative consequences for themselves and for others. And so what's the understanding that, like, that can encompass the experiences of all parties and reconcile them with each other? Like, in the sense, our big question in physics is, like, how do we reconcile relativity with quantum mechanics? How do we come up with an understanding that envelops the seemingly incompatible understandings of the world encompassed, that represented by quantum mechanics and relativity, which both are, relativity and quantum mechanics both have been revolutionary and useful in our understanding of the world, but you can say that like they're working in different places, they're working on different scales or whatever, but you want to try to find this unified understanding where you're not coming up with all these contradictions. And so that's like the working edge. That's how you locate the sort of like bleeding edge of understanding. And so then we can think like culturally, socially, politically. Where do we locate the working edge for us to be able to communicate and coordinate the ways that we're living in some way that is workable for as many people as possible. I mean, and I can say that, like, one thing that seems pretty sure is that, let's say, if I, as an individual, am for whatever reason, predisposed as viewing you as a threat to me, or as an enemy to me, or as a threat to some aspect of how I identify myself. And just to reiterate that the ways in which we identify ourselves are, in a sense, inextricable from the strategies with which we move in the world in order to ensure our survival and potentially thriving. If I or you or both of us are looking for a more expansive understanding that would allow us to see each other as not obstacles to each other's well-being and existence, and allow us to see each other as at least compatible as co-inhabitants of the world that we live in, and perhaps even, ideally, as allies or mutually beneficial to each other, or entities that could potentially help each other or improve the well-being of each other, contribute towards the well-being of each other. If we're looking for something like that, then one thing that's going to help that along is for me not to be actively inhibiting your well-being, and vice versa. I can't be stealing your shit or preventing your access to the basic shit that you need to survive, and expect you know, and expect to be able to like come to some kind of synergetic collaboration with you. I mean, I'm kind of, I feel like I'm orbiting around another kind of just sort of axiomatic nothing type of statement that like the conflict, where there's the conflict, and more generally speaking, where the problem is, like where you perceive a problem is obviously the place where you have to look for the solution. I mean, this is stupid to say, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound stupid? It's as stupid as saying, if you got problems, you better fix them. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that song in the Dangerous Minds soundtrack where the chorus is like, I got problems, gotta solve them, got problems. It's a really relatable song, wouldn't you agree? I recommend, checking it out. Dangerous Minds soundtrack. The song, I think the song is just called Problems. Highly relatable song, but just saying that this relates to, I mean, this is like essentially what I'm saying. I mean, I'm saying in sort of an elaborate and complicated way. Something that's completely obvious. Something that, in a certain sense, I don't think really needs to be said, but, maybe I'm arriving at it myself after, some long and winding train of thought. Coming back to some very basic and seemingly axiomatic expression of reality. Would in some sense gives me some type of like very deep kind of reassurance, if you will, but it's hopefully not the type of reassurance that like simply is explaining away problems or dodging them, but that in a certain in some certain kind of like existential fundamental aspect of life and experience in general, that the problemness is fundamental to existence, and that's okay, or that's a type of constant, and there's the problem is an aspect of everything that we would also think of as good. But this is the sort of thing that you don't have to say, and maybe it's not even helpful to say because it could potentially be misconstrued towards a comforting type of notion that everything's okay and nothing needs to be done. It's kind of sort of the opposite. Is, I mean, even if there's some kind of truth to that on an ultimate type of level, the total inverse of that, the other side of that, is that the problem is constant and you need to be constantly working on the problem, and that the manifestation of the problematic aspect of reality manifests with particular forms that call for some particularity in their response. And so I suppose that, and this thing that I'm doing, I am not talking much at all about the particularity of a response, because that particularity, the particular form that it arrives, is going to be somewhat different for each person. However, it does imply that it's not just anything goes. It does not imply a nihilism. It implies that there is some particular range of solutions to the problems that would be workable and that would allow the process of life for everybody and thing, even the most expansive conception of what life is, even to understand it as something more expansive than what we traditionally think of as life, to continue and then of course, you know, the counterpoint to that is that in a certain sense this is it continuing, that this experiencing of the problem is in some sense the beginning of the solution necessarily. And that the more we experience the problem, the more imperative it is that we work towards the solution or the change, and the change in our understandings and our actions. I mean, I feel like I'm devolving into platitudes here, empty platitudes. And in some sense, you could think of this whole thing as one very long, empty platitude that, in certain moments of passing, might seem to have substance. However, the more comprehensively that you can conceive of what's going on here, I think the more of the emptiness you'll be able to perceive. And I view that as a good thing if you are able to experience this, me and whatever I'm doing, as ultimately empty, because then you're less directed towards the exterior, and you get redirected ideally towards your own subjectivity and your own agency and ability to affect some kind of some degree of change, you know, and not like you can control everything, but there's some things you can. There's some limited sphere in which you can do things. Even if it's just the mildly, even if you just have some mild increased plasticity of a conception of selfhood, which is always, that's what I like, I think, even though, I don't know, it's also bullshit. As in, that's empty. Maybe it's like we exhibit some kind of skepticism towards even anything that might seem exciting, because of our understanding that even that which seems fresh and true like pertinently true. Becomes, potentially a calcified thing that becomes a problem later on, or whatever. But it's like there's even this stance of skepticism is equally deserving of skepticism. Sometimes I have this question that if I am perceiving evil, what's going on? Is that a true and accurate assessment of something, or is this reflective of an aspect of myself? And I have not come up with an answer to that. However, I could say something like, my own perception of evil in the world is strongly correlated with myself feeling negative emotions and things like hate directed or anger directed. At the same time, often when I feel things like that, I am also experiencing some kind of like anger towards myself. That is, when I am feeling angry towards something exterior or someone exterior, it's pretty easy for me to also look at aspects of myself and be angry towards that or perceive them negatively, and for that to lead towards frustration, and also, you know, like my perception of evil going on in the world is also correlating with a certain frustration of my inability to stop it or to change it. Like those two feelings are very linked with each other. And I guess I can equate that with some type of disequilibrium, and whether I think of that disequilibrium as internal and personal about my personal feelings, or I think of that disequilibrium as interpersonal or social or political, as in being like not only internal. Maybe it's like it, in some ways, it sort of works the same way. And that type of disequilibrium, like no matter what scale, in terms of like how intensely an individual is feeling it, or a collective group of people are feeling it, and no matter the temporal scale, like, is it just fleeting in a moment, or is it like years long, or is it a type of disequilibrium that encompasses a person's entire lifespan, or like a whole generation of people, or multiple generations of people experiencing this same problem that, you know, will manifest internally as these negative feelings, and manifest external as these interpersonal or intergroup conflicts. In a sort of idealistic side of things, I will say that those disequilibriums imply the action of an equilibrium. As in, a disequilibrium is the movement of an equilibrium. Even if it's not possible to place yourself outside of the scope of the disequilibrium. You know, or to put it in maybe somewhat crude social terms, like if there is something like an injustice, which I'm kind of thinking of as one particular type of disequilibrium. Like it can go on. This injustice can go on for much longer than the scale of a person's lifetime. To say that there's not always a happy ending for every individual. There's not always resolution. There's not always a balancing out of things for any given individual. However, in the very long scope of things, I'm saying that disequilibriums always move eventually toward equilibrium. And I don't think there's a lot of specific implications of that which I just said, other than in the ultimate sense, like I was saying before, in the sense that transcends time and space. There's perfect equilibrium, which is, I mean, in my mind, it's equated both with total oneness and total emptiness. However, along the lines of my own, brand of metaphysics that I have frequently espoused on this channel, perfect equilibrium, i.e. perfect oneness, perfect emptiness, in a sense, is so perfectly whole and so perfectly emptiness, and so perfectly empty and so perfectly at rest that it does not effectively exist in any way that can be experienced. There's no separation. It's really without time, which is the same as saying it's eternal, and without space, which is the same as saying that it is everything, and it's always, but it's also at the same time never, on and on, etc., various paradoxical sayings that you can extrapolate from that. it is so perfect that it has to manifest itself in the form of imperfection, you could say. Or like the eternal is so eternal that it has to manifest in the form of the temporary. Or that the perfect unity is so everywhere that it has to manifest itself in the form of the specific and localized, or that the good, the ultimate good is so perfect that to be experienced or to have any phenomenal existence whatsoever, the perfect good must manifest in the form of imperfect good or perfection, or like manifesting on a spectrum of scales that even goes towards the evil. I don't know, I guess this is saying, perhaps this has to be investigated more. An implication of what I just said is that evil is a manifestation of the perfect good in its imperfection. It's that evil is the perfect good manifesting as imperfection in order to be registerable, in order to be able to be perceived or experienced. That's a fucked up thing to say, isn't it? That sounds pretty crazy. But I just said it. I'll have to think about that more later. Sounds like a fucked up thing to say. Or that something like injustice is it's like the sort of like the manifestation of injustice is like the temporary, temporalized, localized, highly imperfect, flawed manifestation of justice. It is like the disequilibrious movement of justice, or something like that. I think maybe there's actually a better way to say this, because there's some inaccuracies in how I'm phrasing this, and that it's like not to say that evil is good, or that injustice is justice in a form, but it's saying like the experience and perception of such, which is integral to the response to such, is an integral part of the process of such. So, for example, like the witnessing or experiencing of injustice happening, being the instigator of action or response to it, which can be seen as the process of justice. So it's like the two are inextricable from each other in that sense. Inextricable from each other, but it's not to imply a type of nihilism that wherein nothing matters because it's all an equal part of the one or something like that. No, it's actually like Leonard Cohen said, I guess, like the crack in everything is how the light gets in. I mean, maybe I'm kind of making leaps here. Maybe I'm getting a little too interpretive, making too many connections. You know, they say that's what happens when people are on drugs and stuff. I'm not on drugs, but I'm on sort of like the drug of walking and talking for a long time in the mountains, in a beautiful mountainscape. That's effectively a drug, you could say, and that it has doing this and probably also being on top of this mountain ridge has an expansive effect on my experience. That is, I feel more expansive, and I have a tendency towards seeing connections between things more than I would ordinarily. Whereas ordinarily I might be more disposed towards perceiving the differences between things and exercising more judgment and discernment and specificity towards my thinking and my actions in the world. That being more representative of like the basic quote unquote normal experience or whatever. And so they say, like, you know, if you're like stoned all the time, you might be, you know, perceiving, you might be experiencing the connectiveness of reality a little too much, and therefore have an imbalance where you're not so much, you're less experiencing the like discernment and specificity and judgment type of awareness. And it's kind of like both are necessary, you know what I mean? Like, it's like as much as I feel it very important to me to go and walk on a mountain for a long period of time and to talk continuously for a period of time, and because it's I don't know, this idiosyncratic mode of thinking or experiencing that I've gotten myself into or whatever, in which I experience something like expansiveness or clarity and connectedness between myself and things, and between things and things. It'll also be important to me to return to the specificity of my quote-unquote normal life, in which specific things will need to be done because of specifically who I am and connections that I have in the world. The context in which I live. Whatever. This is also not saying anything. Other than some kind of very stupid platitude that you should get trippy sometimes, but then you should also get really normal at times. They're both important. And when I say get trippy, I don't just mean doing psychedelics or something. I just mean like doing whatever it is that gives you this sense of understanding where you are in the world and your relation to it and connection to the world. I don't know. I shouldn't even be too specific. It's not really possible to describe what I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. You already know what I mean. For me, doing something for a long time is what does it. But it's kind of like when you do whatever you do that gets you empty, or however you want to think of it, because obviously however I'm going to describe it is going to be insufficient. Whatever makes you feel empty, aka whole, aka trippy, aka clear, whatever, or nothing, makes you feel your nothingness in an expansive way. I mean, I don't even have to say this, because like necessarily you have to come back down to earth. Like you will come back down to earth in one way or another. So just don't be afraid of that. Don't get attached to nothing. Because if you get attached to nothing, there's nothing to get attached to, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because there's nothing there. There's nothing here. And then the nothing inevitably is going to manifest as a something. Meaning you're gonna go back to being a particular something that has to do certain things. That has there's going to be apparently some range of suitable things for you to do, and then you just do them. And you'll have this is really funny because I just like I am perceiving myself as if I'm giving advice, but it's totally, it's like so pointless and general that it's like, it's just funny. Like I'm gonna like say something as like ostensibly wise, but also just like completely obvious to any idiot. You're gonna have problems, and you're gonna have to solve them, just like the song, like Dangerous Minds soundtrack, Problems. It's simultaneously the stupidest song and the most profound song. I just want to make a version that's only the chorus, also the part that says, I got problems, I gotta solve them. You know, I could essentially just be saying that over and over again for this whole 4 hours, and it'd be essentially the same. Maybe a little more boring, or maybe I should actually do that. Maybe that's a pretty decent idea. How did I end up here? I missed the whole scenic point of part of the trail, but that's okay. Going this way is more like easy. I like this comforting, soft feeling of the pine needles under my feet. It's like walking on a cushion. I'm just making a little side detour here to fill up time, because I walked this way before. Remember when I was like trying to figure out how to reconcile the horror of the world with my decision to like go and walk and talk. You know, I've seen a copperhead hanging out in the rocks here, and it was really cool. It's like a very beautiful snake, actually, and then like also regarding its like dangerousness, like potentially even deadliness, but it, you know, I think people usually don't die from a bite, but they could possibly. But it's like, you know, sometimes in a way, kind of comforting to come across an animal that could be, you know, in the wild, that can still be considered a threat to humans. Like at least you're still here. At least we haven't eliminated you yet, copperheads. I got problems, I gotta solve them. I got problems, gotta solve them. Got problems, I gotta solve them. I might even be misquoting the song or something. I'm not even sure if that part about having to solve them is actually part of the chorus, or if it's one of those things that's just kind of thrown in towards the end one time. But regardless, it's in my version of the song where you just repeatedly say, I got problems, gotta solve them. Got problems, gotta solve them. Got problems, gotta solve them. It's not to like make light of actual problems. It's not to say that they're silly or something. It's not to and not to say that they well, I mean, it's expressly not to say it's expressly to not say that they just solve themselves. I suppose that some of what I'm saying could be interpreted as from the standpoint of the ultimate, or from the standpoint of the universe, problems eventually solve themselves, but that does not, that's different from the standpoint of you, or really anything that has identity. From the standpoint of anything that has identity, it's like that identity must act accordingly to solve the problem. So I don't know. This might be a little bit. This might be kind of a little bit new agey or something, or this might be a little loopy of a thing to say, but kind of like, yeah, go. It's like, okay, realize your identification with the universe. Realize yourself as a manifestation of the universe, and realize that manifestation as an agency that has to go forward and exercise that agency and solve problems. Know what I'm saying? Or like a normal life in which you have to do shit is an extension of all the trippy stuff. It's a part of the trippy stuff. It might be actually the most trippy. You know, get it together, do your shit. That's part of the really trippy shit. Getting your shit together. And I don't mean, you know, I don't mean like get your hustle together and make a lot of money. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean doing the thing that you know you gotta do. That's in service of all that good stuff. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Like you can get, you go ahead and expand what you're identified with, you know, to the whole universe or whatever, and then still you're gonna have this individual perspective that's part of that. Whatever. I know I sound like a dweeb. But I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Sorry. You know, I couldn't walk and talk for quite a while. I would come out somewhere, start walking, start talking, sometimes even talk for quite a while, and just be like, I hate this. This sucks. This sucks, and there's no point in doing this, at least today. It's just not working. I can't see any reason to keep recording this and then uploading this and waste your goddamn time listening to it, because it was all complete bullshit, and I was experiencing the bullshit of it. I was experiencing the bullshitness of what I was doing in a negative way. And so, over and over again, I would try to walk and talk and then stop, and then usually just either immediately go home or just walk and not talk. I do that. But still, that all seemed like a problem in a sense. It has kept gnawing at me, and then kept gnawing at me, you know, my inability and also my not understanding why to walk and talk. And but at the same time having something gnawing at me that says you have to go do it, you have to go walk and talk still, even though it seems like bullshit, even though you can't see the reason for doing it, because I didn't feel good about not doing it either. And then the appearance in the world of circumstances that seem even worse than they already were. The horror of the world putting itself on full display, and the involvement in that horror by entities with which ostensibly I'm associated with which theoretically are supposed to represent me to some extent, And so, the responsibility to do something specifically about that, like, God damn it, why the fuck are you doing this, USA? Why the fuck are you doing this, USA? God fucking damn it. You're gonna make me come down from my fucking metaphysical goddamn perch and call my fucking congressman. My fucking congressman is being a fucking asshole about this. And then like, okay, increasingly this brings the question even more pertinently, okay, why, how then am I gonna walk and talk in a time like this? And, obviously the question isn't answered, but actually I am very glad that I did, or that I still am. Maybe I'm being a little bit lazy right now with this particular type of self-analysis around walking and talking. Yeah, sure, it's a little bit lax, but it's been a little while, and I'm still trying to get warmed up to it, so give me a fucking break. I'm just joking. There's no excuses. No excuses for this idiocy. However, in all sincerity, I will say that doing this, at least in some kind of temporary sense, at least for my individual subjectivity, however flawed and however misaligned it may be with that of the rest of the world, who knows? I don't think I'm the best person to determine that. It does, at least in that regard, help me kind of it does kind of help me put myself on a certain process of understanding my relationship with the rest of the world in some way that feels more positive than negative, or maybe positive, negative is not the right way to think about it. Just helps me in my individual subjectivity position myself with regards to the rest of reality, and seem to have a slightly more comprehensive view of the connectedness therein, and at least temporarily, maybe I'm just high from walking and talking for 4 hours and from being on this mountain ridge. I mean, obviously I am, but to at least get some kind of glimpse of a potentiality or possibility of a relationship with someone like you that is possibly positive or in some respect could be construed as positive, or at least a part of a process that is larger than myself. I mean, this is of course. I'm of course getting grandiose. Let's get away from this. Let's get away from this topic. Forget I said anything. Because I still got like half an hour of time to fill as per my agreement with myself. Let's try to get through this remaining 25 minutes or so without saying anything that's too egregiously stupid, or maybe the opposite approach is called for. Try to get through this 25 minutes without saying anything that's too egregiously intelligent sounding. How about that? I got problems, gotta solve them. Got problems, gotta solve them. Got problems, gotta solve them. I'm gonna propose somebody else carry out this piece. I'm making a proposal for anyone else who's interested to upload a video or audio recording of themselves just saying, I got problems, I gotta solve them. I got problems, gotta solve them. Just repeating that for 4 hours, or however long you can take it for. However long you can manage, just to repeat that. I got problems, gotta solve them. Make a recording of it, upload it somewhere. Send me a link. I'd love to see and hear it. Consider it a dare. I dare you. I dare you. You can, if you do it, put the link in the comments below this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, or email it to me, sittingandsmiling@gmail.com. Sitting and smiling, all one word, @gmail.com. And I'll share it with other people. I'll post it in the YouTube community section or whatever. Community section. Shut up, YouTube. Community. How dare you use that word? It's not a fucking community. Shut up, YouTube. Putting the fucking ads on everybody's channel who's not a partner, whether they want it or not. Get a fucking grip, YouTube. You're trying to get around ad blocker, doing this like, we've detected your using ad blocker bullshit. YouTube fucking sucks. I mean, it's great also. But it's great, but this is the problem with every goddamn platform, is like anytime they hit on anything remotely successful, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, anytime they, find anything that people like, and people liking to use it is the reason that it's successful, is the reason that any advertisers want to purchase ads on the platform, then they just go and try to fucking monetize every little aspect of it. They just wanna fucking wring like pennies out of every user, or like force more ads upon their shit, and put more and more fucking ads, like till the ratio is like, you're watching ad, oh, something that somebody actually posted, ad, until the thing becomes fucking so disgusting that people can't palate using it, and then the thing fails. That's just like the pattern that all these fucking social media and other platforms go through. They just like get so greedy and make the platform so disgusting to use until people just quit. And then advertisers don't want to advertise on there more. And YouTube is apparently in the process of doing that by forcing ads on people's shit, whether they want it or not. And then, like, I mean, honestly, the only way that I can find YouTube palatable to even use is with AdBlock Plus as a browser extension, blocking all the ads, and it does a very good job. I wouldn't fucking stand for any ads, really. Like these pre-roll ads to watch a video. I hate that shit. I've been keeping my own videos unmonetized, and like I moved all the walking and talking videos to their own walking and talking channel, and much to my dismay, I found that like that channel was not of partner status, and so I could not control whether ads appear on the videos or not. And then just recently, it did receive partner status because it got around 10,000 subscribers, and they said, "Congratulations, you're a partner, and now you can start making money." Like, and so I'm like, "Oh, great! I'm gonna disable monetization on all the videos, because even in times when I have monetized, it's like, it's the amount of money is so pithy, it's not worth exposing everybody to this fucking mind-numbing, brainwashing bullshit that's so deleterious to people's sanity." Which, this, by the way, seems like this brings us to an opportune moment to mention that I do have a Patreon channel that associated a Patreon account where some people donate some money to support me being able to do this. I know I've been very inconsistent for the reasons I mentioned about at times hating doing this. However, The support of donations from Patreon does very much help materially and emotionally to motivate me and allow me to continue spending my time in such an insane manner, such an otherwise insane manner. It helps me to rationalize what I'm doing as not totally self-destructive for my future well-being. And if you want to contribute a little bit to that, it's patreon.com/Benjamin Bennett. I think that's what it is. I guess I better put the link in the description. I'm historically very inconsistent about posting patron-only content on there because the logic of it seems kind of stupid to me, that if I'm going to make something, why do I have to artificially create the scarcity of that content by putting it behind a paywall? Why wouldn't I want to just share it publicly and freely? As long as that's what I'd prefer to do, as long as I feel some extent of and feel enough extent of material security that I don't feel like I'm gonna go completely broke. However, as I say this sort of thing, maybe it is reminding me that maybe I should post some more behind the paywall bullshit to help incentivize people like you to quit freeloading off of, off of my bullshit. So I'll make something up to post there that will temporarily obscure its own emptiness. You know what I'm saying? I'll post something up there that when you look at it impulsively, you'll be like, "Ooh, that's interesting," or "Ooh, I want to experience whatever the fuck he's selling there." Maybe it's a podcast that I derived, or maybe I made a mix of music, or maybe I wrote an essay, or maybe I posted up some of my own music up there, and momentarily or temporarily like, new forms of experience, new content for my experience. Maybe I want to exchange a few of my hard-earned bucks for that. And then you'll do it, and temporarily you'll maybe feel interested in something or stimulated by something, and then eventually you'll kind of like realize that all content of experience is ultimately a manifestation of emptiness, and you don't actually have to pay any money to experience emptiness at all. That it's actually freely available. But however, maybe you'll feel good about supporting this particular manifestation of emptiness. Walking and talking and sitting and smiling, and etc. Come on, support your parasocial friend here. we're friends, right? You and me are friends, right? Would a friend not give another friend $5? Come on, what kind of friend is that? I'm just joking. You know we're just parasocial friends, right? You don't have. I'm not guilting you. You don't have to feel any guilt. While you're at it, though, you know, and in terms of things I've been alluding to, there are many people in the world, as you well know, experiencing much more dire and urgent needs than I am, to which apparently you can donate. I mean, I hope the aid is getting in, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. To chuck them a few bucks if you have, if you yourself feel even reasonably secure in your material needs. A few bucks to thousands of people, millions of people that are markedly insecure in their basic material needs. Come on. I put some links the other day. I posted some links to that the other day in the community section of my Benjamin Bennett YouTube channel. At the moment, I have two channels. There's the Benjamin Bennett and Walking and Talking, and maybe I have some more channels. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I have, who knows how many YouTube channels I have right now. Anyhow, just there's some links there to some organizations that would probably be happy to put a few of your hard-earned bucks in service towards helping some people in an extremely fucked up situation in which they could die any moment. Let's see what we still got some time to fill as per our mutual contract. Just kidding, you and I don't have any contract because you're not paying me shit. I can do whatever I want. However, I have a contract with myself. Also, I feel grateful for the few people who do donate to my Patreon account. See what you see what I mean about returning from the trippiness into the pragmatic world, and how that pragmatism in some senses could be described as a manifestation of what's trippy. Isn't it kind of, don't you find it kind of interesting that you're sitting here listening to me talk about money things? After I went on, leading out of talking about all this philosophical shit. Isn't that both kind of a little suspicious, but also kind of interesting and kind of funny? Admit it. Admit it. You're entertained by this a little bit. Hold on, I do have to whiz again. See? You see what I'm saying? You see what I mean when I say I could just be repetitively chanting, I got problems, gotta solve them the whole time, and it'd be of the same sort of value. Maybe. Maybe not. But I'm serious though about this. This is call this the Ben Bennett challenge today. I got two challenges. I got two challenges for you today. I got three challenges. I got three challenges for you. First challenge is if you live in the U.S., call your goddamn congressperson and let them know what you think about the U.S. Funding and supporting a genocide, or if you live in another Western country that has a government that is supporting this, then do the equivalent. Challenge number two, give a little bit of money to one of these aid organizations. Find the link in the comments, or maybe I'll put it in the description of this video. And then challenge number three, upload a video or audio recording to whatever platform of yourself repeating, I got problems, gotta solve them. Got problems, gotta solve them. Continuously for however long you can possibly manage it. However long you possibly, you gotta set a goal beforehand. You gotta set your goal beforehand. You can't just say I'm gonna do it for however long I feel like it, because then it's gonna get tough. It's gonna get tough, and you're gonna be like, okay, I guess that's enough. No, you gotta set yourself a goal that's difficult. You gotta set yourself. You gotta say, I'm gonna do it for 1 hour, or I'm gonna do it for 2 hours, or I'm gonna do it for 4 hours, or I'm gonna do it for 8 hours. And you gotta set that, you gotta make that agreement with yourself beforehand, because it's gonna get tough at times, and that agreement is what's gonna help you continue. And It's what's going to help you get through the difficulty of continuously saying, I got problems, got to solve them for that long. And it's going to get you through to the other side. And once you get to that goal, or even if you actually find that you reach some kind of practical or physical limit before that goal, you at least know that you actually tried as hard as you could. And that's going to come back to you in a very rewarding way. Believe me. And then you're going to upload it, and you're going to post the link to it in the comments below this video. And you're going to email me the link to sittingandsmiling@gmail.com. And then I'm going to, and if you really did that, then I'm going to share the link. I'm going to share the video or the audio or whatever it is in the community tab of my YouTube channel, and you're going to be famous. It's gonna be great. Who's that rustling? Who's that rustling in the leaves? Oh, a chipmunk? That's a chipmunk, I think. Yeah. That was hilarious. It just poked its head out, and then it just like disappeared under there. I am glad that I finally got back around to walking and talking. It's so weird that the experience of it is also so different every time. You remember the last one? Really different. Like, what the hell? Also, like, strange developments. I'm like, isn't it kind of like aberrant that I'm like talking, I'm like letting in something topical that's going on, even if I'm in some way trying to be a little bit indirect about it, or just to like allow for you to be as open and free in your own reflection and thinking about whatever it is I'm talking about, because I'm not so much trying to control. I'm trying not to brainwash you. I'm trying my best not to brainwash you. Maybe that's a lie. Maybe in my own way I am trying to brainwash you. However, I'm just noting that this episode, in a way, got kind of topical, as in there's a reference here that's going to be relevant to a certain time and place in the world. But I also hope that doing that isn't like destroying any possibility of something like a more broader type of relevance. Towards a wisdom new and old, etc. And also not overly obscuring also the emptiness and the pointlessness. But it's also not It's also not, if I'm to be honest. Not totally. Apparently not totally. Anyhow, I think it's that time. And honestly, I want to sincerely thank you for being my parasocial friend. I mean, does it work both ways? I don't know. Like, if I'm your parasocial friend, what does that make you to me? I'm not sure, but honestly, I feel kind of grateful for it, even if it is just your viewing boosting my ego a little bit, you know. The knowledge of your viewership, as abstracted into a view count. Doesn't that sound cynical and disturbing? Anyhow, sincerely though, thanks for listening. Bye. Sorry, that wasn't. Bye. Bye. There it is.